record on this. Hi, Lara.
Hi.
Thank you for agreeing to come on the Challenging University podcast. I have been following your story very closely, but so I don't give anything away. For the listeners today and the listeners to come, could you please share your full name and what it is that you currently do now?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Tony, for having me. I've actually been watching your podcasts for a while, and I really like them. So I was like, I'm quite happy that
Oh,
I get to kind of get involved now. So my name is Lara Vafiadis. So currently I am director of UK and European sales at a cybersecurity company called Conceal. We are a US startup. I am the European arm of this startup company. Aside to that, I'm also a solo ocean rower. So I've just at the beginning of this year completed my first solo ocean row. I like how I said first because
yeah.
there will be another one, but I've kind of just said that now. So yes,
Wow.
my first one. So I rode from La Gomera in the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean, 3,000 miles, and I was out there for 98 days all by myself. So I'm like a cybersecurity salesperson, and then I kind of call myself like an adventurer as well, which is kind of like a
Yeah.
very but that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. See, now I'm thinking about, I don't know, navigating your way around, going under the radar, or
Mm.
using radar, or we'll find a way. We'll find a way to tie these things together. Let's before we get into the detail on this, because there's so many questions that I have. Um, I
Mm.
want to know, the listeners would love to know, what are your memories then of secondary school?
So secondary school, and I was thinking about this quite a lot over the past couple of days. Secondary school was really funny for me because I I'm gonna say I wasn't the best student, to be really honest.
Mhm.
I had just other views of what I really wanted to do. I was just chasing boys around, I think, for most of my time. Um, but it was, yeah, it was a good mix, I think, from what I can remember, and it wasn't to do with kind of exams and GCSEs and then A levels and everything. It was mostly enjoyable. I was very sporty, so I think
Yeah,
from that aspect, I really focused on that mostly. And then kind of when it came to the academic side, I was one of those annoying children that I think teachers, and I still meet them. I met a teacher that used to teach me when I was 15. I think it was going into
yeah,
GCSE, and he said, you were one of the most annoying peoples, and I remember you because you're really intelligent, but really you were just focused on like your sporting things. So I was always out playing hockey and netball and
yeah,
cricket and rugby and all the stuff. And I love how he still remembers me because I'm still, not that I have quite a memorable name, so I could never get away with anything because everyone knows
yeah,
my surname. But I think it was, yeah, I was always the one that I think teachers were like, if you just did a little bit more. I was like, but I just ended up focusing on my sport. But then actually I did fairly well in my GCSEs and A levels. So it didn't, I think it could have gone a lot better. And I kind of look
yeah,
back now. I am that person now, and I talk to kind of my friends' children, and I'm like, you do have to, school is really important, and actually it's really good if you do focus on it. It's a great time, and you don't have any
yeah,
bills to pay, and there's no taxes. You just get told what to do every day. It's brilliant.
yeah,
And I didn't really realize that when I was younger. But it's, yeah, secondary school for me was, I did enjoy it, but I think kind of looking back, maybe I should have just focused on slightly things in a slightly different way. But it's not to say that actually it's made me who I am today. So it's a
yeah.
mixture.
I'm intrigued to know how. Now I know at school they don't teach ocean rowing, but some schools do offer like programs where you can
Yeah.
spend a couple of weeks learning to row, things like that, outward bound centres. But really, team sports player, but able to be on your own. I'm
Yeah.
interested in, is there a science behind that? Is there something about sports people, your brain that make, because I wouldn't have automatically, I guess, made that connection, I suppose.
Yeah, potentially. I think there's especially to do with because I did, yeah, predominantly I was very much a team sport player. So it was always I was in the hockey team, I was in the netball team, I was in the cricket team, and it was all very
Yeah,
much just focused on that team ethos. I
yeah,
think when it comes to kind of the ocean rowing thing, I think the ability to be able to kind of I was so focused on being as good as I can within that team. I
yeah.
think that realization is actually I can probably just do this by myself. And I think you do quite a lot of I think also going, especially when you're that age, kind of going away on matches and going away to go and do kind of like team events, and you're away for like a weekend or you're away for a week and you're going to play in some country or something. I think
Yeah.
it does make you very self-sufficient,
Yeah.
and still kind of being brought up with that attitude towards that kind of that sports mentality. So you kind of are always trying to do better. Like if you're,
Yeah.
I was really into my running, so I was in like the national running athletics competition when I was,
Wow.
and I think it really gives you a lot of focus for one of what you're probably capable of. And I think
Yeah.
I've kind of brought that into my work now. And I think it's whenever I interview people, if someone's got like a sports background,
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite interested in them, because I'm like, what is it? Because to be like a sports person, or to do something, if you do well in sport, you do have to have a slightly different attitude towards kind of the way you're working, and that focus that you can kind of try and get. So it's funny, yeah, I spent all my time doing those team sports, and then I ended up on a boat by myself.
I've had enough of you, all of you.
I'm gonna go in
um,
the sun of boats. It's fine.
so academically, what subjects did you focus on? Because if you listen to some people who I believe have got things a little bit wrong, they'll tell you cannot have a cybersecurity career unless you've done all the computer sciences and the sciences, and you've got
Yeah.
grades in maths. So now you can tell me I did, yeah, math, computer science. What did you focus on at GCSE and A levels if you did them?
So I'm going to just say broadly the arts generally. So I didn't do, so in GCSEs, I think you have to do certain science. So I ended up
Yes.
doing science and maths and things,
Yeah.
and I did all the ones that you kind of have to do.
Yeah.
But then when I actually moved to A levels, genuinely, I did history,
Yeah.
I did art, I did
Yeah.
English literature, and I did
Yeah.
drama.
Ah, wow.
So
So you're just
I
quite an
yeah, zero
all-rounder.
maths or kind of science or anything to do with that at all. Yeah.
Fascinating, isn't it? So tell me about what it was like at home. What did your parents kind of say to you, recommend to you? Did they have a view on they thought, and I know you didn't go to uni, so I guess we'll talk about that. What was their guidance, background, hopes for you?
So I think I'm probably a an interesting case in that I think at school it was very much you have to go to university.
Yeah,
However, because of my dad, he put up a very successful career, but at school he was basically just regarded as, they just thought he was a massive idiot. The reason being he was
right.
really dyslexic,
Yeah,
um, and he couldn't do so. He was incredibly intelligent, but
yeah,
if you look at kind of, this is kind of way back in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, if you weren't able to kind of do kind of English things in a certain way, or maths things in a
yeah,
certain way, they didn't understand that kind of different way of working within, like, his he's when he was an incredibly intelligent man.
yeah,
So I think once he realized that he got a long way in his career and set up a company that's still running today, he didn't do that anything without, there's no higher education there. That's just life experience that kind
yeah,
of got him that. And he always used to tell us, and I don't know how relevant it is, but I still think about it. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And this is like
yeah,
a constant thing in my head when I'm meeting people and kind
yeah,
of making connections. I just call it making friends, because I like to
yeah,
make a lot of friends in a lot of different areas, because it's just,
yeah,
you never know when someone's going to come back to it.
yeah,
And so it is one of those things that when we were at home, I think from that time when you're kind of figuring out in A levels, and kind of everyone's discussing whether they're going to go to Oxbridge and all
yeah,
these amazing universities for us, and this is kind of across the board, because I'm one of four children.
yeah,
My two older siblings did go to university because they wanted to, but it was never a case of you have to go to university. There was never like this thing that, because he didn't, he was like, you
yeah.
don't have to go. He did incredibly well without having to go, and he knows that it doesn't suit everyone.
Mm,
So I think in that case I was fairly lucky. I think my
yeah,
mum was always, as being of an ilk of, you just do what you want to do and you find your passion, and if it's
yeah,
working here or doing that, then do that. Don't feel like you have to kind of follow the crowd, which is quite nice, because it's kind of what obviously not really followed the crowd in what
Yeah.
I've done. It was quite a refreshing kind of way to be brought up, especially because there's all that pressure. So it was quite nice going home
Yeah.
and not having it.
Yeah. It's fantastic. What did when you sat your A levels,
Mm.
afterwards, what did your sixth form or your careers guidance or teacher, what did they think you should be doing? What did they suggest to you might like to do?
So I remember, and I actually found this really recently going through some of my old things. We did like that career advisory. You have to
Yeah.
and it's like you have to say what all your stuff, and then they come back saying, "We think you'd be really good at this job, and you should go and
Yeah.
do this." So it came back that basically I should either go and work in it was like an art literature, not art historian thing, or
Okay.
a something to do with just history. Archaeology seemed to be quite a big thing, and so I should go and do this, or I should go and do
Yeah.
this, because I've just basically they were like, we've just taken the fact that I do art and history and kind of
Yeah.
put it
Yeah.
together. I think I do remember reading it and kind of going, okay, I mean, I don't really want to do that, but thanks. It
Yeah.
was quite nice meeting you kind of thing. It didn't really help me. And I do remember kind of having conversations with my sixth form tutor that we used to have every week, and we kind of talk about the future and kind of universities and what we were planning on doing. And I remember being sat there and everyone's like, we're going to go to like, so and so's going to go to Durham and do this.
Yeah.
And all these people are going to Oxford and Cambridge, and isn't this amazing? And I used to be sat there going, I don't really want to go. I don't really want to go to any spaces. And I think when I realized, I was like, if I'd go to university and they suggested that I go and do art, or they suggested that I go and do art history, I was like, oh, what's it? I'd probably have a lovely time
Yeah.
and I probably enjoy it. But what was the reason for it? And I was like, I didn't really understand it, and I didn't really get that feeling of going, I have to go to university. I think my
Yeah.
sixth form teachers get quite annoyed with me in that
Yeah.
I just wouldn't kind of, they're like, yeah, you have to fill in all your forms and do your
Yeah.
what's that document called that you have to
UCAS.
UCAS. Yeah, there we go. And
Yeah.
I remember doing it and kind of going, I don't know. There was no reason for it. I didn't get that kind of feeling. I'm kind of going, this is what I really want to do. I'm really excited to go and do
Yeah.
art or English literature or any of these things. So yeah, I was the odd one out.
What did you do then?
So when I left school, I was kind of thinking, what am I going to do? I basically wanted to go and earn and learn a skill.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up working at Waitrose for
Yeah.
a short while when I was
Very
about 18
nice.
or 19. It was a great discount at the time.
Yeah.
But actually, I remember speaking to my dad and having quite an in-depth conversation, saying I want to be able to have something that it's a skill that I would like to earn money on, and
Yeah.
also just have life experience. So
Yeah.
I ended up actually going training as a yacht skipper. So I'd sailed since I was about 2.
Right. Okay. Because so how do you go? I thought you were going to say
Yeah,
I had to become a specialist cheese person in Waitrose. Right. So
yeah.
you've been sailing since
So
you were a
I mean, the
baby.
waitress thing was great, and I think my mum really appreciated the discount as well. But it was
Yeah.
I already knew I loved being on the ocean. I did a lot of
Right.
sailing when I was younger. There's
Yeah.
like a picture of me when I was 2 on the
Yeah.
helm of a boat, and I genuinely
Right.
pull the same like face now when I'm sailing, and I find it
What
hilarious.
is it?
It's like a concentrating face when I'm like, so I'm just really focused on
Oh,
the task. It's like a grimace. So yeah, so it was. I knew that I kind of wanted to use that, and
right.
my dad, bless him, I think he was focused. He maybe thought one of us was going to go into the army, maybe follow him and do some things, and I thought, no, I don't really want to do that. So, yeah, we kind of came up with this thing saying if I could go and train and actually earn my tickets to kind of get my
Yeah.
qualifications, my crew, my day skipper, and then I eventually became a yachtmaster. So I was
Right.
21 when I became a yachtmaster. So that's a fully fledged
That's young.
It is young, and it was a mixture of, I thought I had a lot of experience because I'd done a lot of sailing in those years to get that
Yeah.
yacht skipper license. But in fairness, trying to get a job being a yacht
Hmm.
skipper when you're 21 years old, people are kind of like, I want you to look either really old, I need you to be a man, or
Yeah.
I kind of, they in their head when they think of like a yacht skipper, they want you to look like Captain Birdseye.
Captain
Is in
Birdseye.
that's the description. They want me to be in like a big like fisherman's jumper
Yeah.
and that I should be some kind of weathered 58-year-old man, basically.
Big sausage fingers.
Yes. And then I turn up and they're like,
Yeah.
you're going to take my, I was like, yeah, I'm going to take your yacht across. I'm fully qualified and I have all the qualifications, but taking their £4 million yacht across the Atlantic Ocean, they'd be like, okay, you're younger than my daughter, kind of thing. But it was
How did you counter that, out of interest?
genuinely really, really hard. I think when I found a couple of people that were actually confident enough with me to say yes, I'd have to show them probably all of the documents saying this is where I've been, these are all the miles I've done, these are the other people that I've taken their boats across. It basically arrived and it was sparkling and it was lovely and they had no issues. I think I had to prove myself a lot more than if I was a man of a certain, even just any man of a certain age. So
Well,
it was hard.
I think and something that does come up is that fact of, for women in many industries, you have to not only qualify in the same way that anyone else has to qualify, but you then have to prove yourself. You have to prove that you're worthy of the certificate that you got, even though you spent hours and hours and hours at sea. And actually the training, so in gaining your, is it certification in doing
So
that?
it's the RYA Yachtmaster. So it's the highest qualification you can get in sailing.
And so thinking about, for me, I'm thinking, oh my God, charts and navigation and measuring things and the qualities and the kind of intelligence and the capabilities that you need to have to be able to do that. Now, whether your teachers were annoyed with you, she should have been a bloody A-star student.
I was just out like playing or something or just running around. Yeah.
But you are obviously wired in that way, and it intrigues me that whilst I can see why in kind of academia it would be, we need people that are highly intellectual, highly intelligent, all these things, and they probably would, I don't know, I'll just start rambling now, but there is for me that thing of, like, so you didn't go to uni, you're running a huge sales team for a technology organization, for a cyber specialist, and you were a yacht skipper at age 21, and you didn't have to have a first in engineering or science or maths to do that. Yeah. God. Wow.
I think and I think you're right. I think what it comes down to, and the one that I think seems to interest me the most, I think it's that aspect around that problem solving. So when it's surprising, when you're on, obviously you've got all the information. When you're on that yacht and you're deciding whether to go like east or west, and it's a case of either missing a massive storm that's going to completely take you out, or you're reading the weather and you're making decisions that are based on some fairly good data, but also you just have to try and figure out what's the best thing to do. I think it's that problem solving. It's an aspect of risk taking that I think is kind of key, and I think it's also within sales, and what I do now is very much focused on that. So I am trying to find ways to obviously help my customers, but also take risks in a certain other aspect. So it's a funny one, because I think I call myself, and I don't normally admit it, I am a bit of a closet geek. So I do like the tech. I do like learning about the tech, and I've only realized this in the years now, where I'm like, actually I like kind of getting in and kind of getting involved and kind of deep diving into all these different things and how it works and aspects of kind of all the different bits, especially around cyber, because it's the sexiest bit in tech, right? It's the, we can't really do that. So I think it is all that, but it's funny how it's kind of come back around, and I'm like, I actually do really enjoy all these things now.
And like you say, sexy and still yet to be fully explored, like the ocean. How
you got a tan rowing than I do working there normally.
You get your license, do a certification. Where do you go, having earned your skipper? Do you go straight out to sea, or are you sitting behind a desk work as well? What kind of brings you forwards?
So I'm a mixture of a couple of things. So I spent a few years just kind of meandering around the sailing world. So you kind of go from boat to boat. You're kind of doing freelance deliveries. I did some racing. I just met a lot of people and got a lot of life experience, and I think that's what. And I loved it. It was a really good way to kind of grow up in like kind of my early 20s. I think genuinely, I came home. It was summer. I think I was maybe 25. I can't really remember that kind of age, and I kind of realized that I needed to either, in my way I described it, was get a proper job, like get like an because I was like, I've just been having a lovely time because I was genuinely enjoying it, and I was like, I kind of need to come back and kind of go, am I going to do this for the next 15 years, or am I actually going to try and find something that's going to suit me and kind of bring me back kind of nearer home, and get a proper job? And I think that's what I used to say to my parents. So I did. I kind of came back and I really went, what can I actually good at? And I was like, well, I've got all these skills around sailing, but they're so niche. How am I going to use it? I think it's the aspect around people that then kind of brought me back around to just sales. So I genuinely started, and I got my first sales job. I worked for a tech company initially, and then I moved into art dealing. So I was selling fine art. So I was almost like kind of coming back to what I was doing at school, and I was really enjoying it. So I was an art dealer for like an art company in the UK, and then realized I was quite good at that. I quite enjoyed the sales thing. I then moved on to houses. So I worked for like an estate agency, realized I'm sorry, all estate agents, I had too many morals to be an estate agent. So I basically left. I'm really sorry. It was lovely, but I just couldn't, so I moved and then back into tech. And then I had a friend who worked at Cisco. And I remember kind of looking through, and I remember looking through the advert, and I've found one recently for Cisco. It was like the most junior position you could get in Cisco. So it was a virtual sales account manager. They used to call them VSAMs. To be a VSAM, it was like either you needed to, so it was very clear you must have a degree. You're either a graduate with a 2-1 or better. You need to be this. You need to have so many years of experience in it. And I was like, this is the most junior position you can get in Cisco, and you're still requiring all of this information. So I sent in a bit of a kind of a speculative CV and said, look, I haven't got all these, but I've it was basically just my sailing CV with a couple of additions because I've spent so long doing that. I remember having kind of that initial first conversation with the recruiter, and it may have changed now, but it was very much she was kind of not. It felt like she was kind of slightly fobbing me off in one of those things because I didn't fit the qualifications. And she said, genuinely, I've kind of phoned you up because I found your CV really interesting, and that's normally how it happens. So I was like, I'm kind of giving you a bit of a chance. So I had a great chat with her. She's like, I'm going to have to talk to the hiring manager because you don't have with the things that we really need to even put you forward for an interview. Thankfully, I think when she's spoken to the hiring manager and she kind of went, well, she's got something kind of different about her, they did give me an interview, and then I had one phone interview, and then they called me in, and about a week before the face-to-face interview, they sent me loads of documents. They were like, right, you need to do a role play, you need to do this, this and this. This is completely new to me. Okay. So I made, and I've still got it because I found it recently. I made a whole document like I was working for Cisco. I mocked it out. I brought it with me. I gave it to them, and they were like, "Okay, this is." And I acted like it was the first time I met them. I just acted like I was their account manager, and they were the end user. And I think it was. I just kind of fully went in there where there's no, I can't. There's nothing for me to lose here. I'm not gonna get any worse in my situation, but also if I take a chance to kind of be a little bit different, then they'll kind of look at me differently. So I did the interview, kind of mock meeting role play. I kind of pitched a couple of value bits around Cisco, and then they stopped it and they were like, yeah. I was like, what? So no, we really like we were kind of intrigued about how you were going to be, because you don't have any of the things that we would normally look for, but the way you come in here, just approached it in a completely different way. I think it was quite refreshing. So I think they offered me in the room for that role, and I came out going, okay, I have to move. It was my initial thing because I was living somewhere else, and then I had to move closer to the Bedfont Lakes office.
big,
Yeah.
isn't
So
it?
it's not, yeah, and I was like, where am I? I was like, where am I going to live?
Yeah.
So I basically moved, and just that's what got me started. It was just I think it was again just thinking differently and kind of having a different attitude towards
Mm,
it. And that's got me that first role in Cisco. Within 9 months, I'd got promotion. I was then BT account manager within Cisco, and then
yeah.
I
Kept going.
just moved.
And you made me think about because some of those interview processes, and I think, well, it's funny because I thought a lot of it had changed, but I hear that some of it hasn't. But the thing I never had to do, which I'm so glad of, but became a real thing, was like group interview scenarios, and then they put you
Yeah,
together with other people that are interviewing for the role, and they send half of them home,
yeah.
which is awful. But one of the exercises is something like you're stranded at sea. So you would have walked it.
I love
You would
that.
have,
Why have I not done that?
they're
I think
like,
it is those weird things. I've had I think I've been fairly lucky with mental. I've had a couple of times where I've been interviewed literally I think I had about 8 interviews, and then I ended up didn't getting the job, and I thought that was completely insane. I kind of remember kind of going, that was too many interviews for then officially
yeah,
then kind of like, oh, they, I think it was like it was like an internal hire or some kind of thing. But it's
yeah,
whole interview process I really struggle with, because it's,
mm,
I think, and because I've now been interviewing a lot more myself, I
yeah,
think I see people, and obviously you kind of, the things that people say, and I'm kind of, all I want them to do is kind of have a very safe space for them to be who they are. And I think if
yeah,
you have a very strict kind of way of interviewing, and it's, you can have someone that's really far back on their chair, and they kind of just like, they're
yeah,
not really engaged. You're
yeah,
not, if people are nervous, you're not going to get the best kind of, you're not going to get the best of them out of it. And it's a funny one, and I really hope, I think I've got some quite good feedback from people that I've hired. I'm
mm,
obviously I'm very friendly, I'm very smiley. I just try, I kind of give them the space to just say what they want to say, and kind of
yeah,
be who they are,
yeah.
rather than have a very like stern look on my face, like I'm just going to read some questions and then tick some boxes. And
Yeah. Do you, out of interest, because you answered a question that I would normally ask, which is kind of
mm,
how do your experiences impact your hiring? Do you
mm.
work with external agencies at all, or do people apply to you directly?
Both, I think, ideally. So I'm quite what would I say? I do quite a lot of kind of outreach to certain people. So if either people that I've worked with before, I then go
Yeah,
and say, oh, I'd to come over here.
yeah,
Sorry everyone, I'm not going to say anything. But I think it is a mix. I find that some of the companies that tend to be, I don't get a very good experience working with some agencies, but then again, I have had a very good experience working with others. It's a very
yeah.
mixed bag.
I
Um,
was intrigued to know if that impacts how you would steer an agency, for
yeah,
example, like the kind of attributes, qualities, skills that you're looking for.
I think you can be stuck, and I'm going to say this for generally kind of just looking at a CV. I think
Mm,
if a CV in general, and you haven't kind of hit some of the words that they want to see,
mm,
I know for fact they are losing great candidates, because maybe they just haven't kind of looked at it in a slightly different way. I think again,
yeah,
it's having that different way of thinking, approaching things in a slightly different way, and you'd be
yeah,
surprised at candidates that are just sat there going, okay, actually we probably do need to talk to this person.
yeah,
I think there's some of the ones that I've done recently, and then hired, I think on paper, probably
mm,
if I'd looked at them, and actually I would have probably chosen the wrong one maybe. And I think having the interview process and kind of having this very open and safe space for them to kind of just be who they are, I think has
mm,
then helped me. And then I think it's also makes them more invested in what they're actually trying to do. So when they do work, kind of start working for you, I know the ones that I've hired, they're incredibly enthusiastic. They're just really happy in the kind of the way that the process has kind of gone. I needed to make it a very positive process, and kind of
mm,
not be this kind of negative connotations around what can happen, and also just not getting back to people who interviewed. And this is my bugbear of
yeah,
all. If someone has bothered to, as in is there, and they've interviewed you, and then there's no response from the company, even
yeah.
the anyone, I have no
Rude.
words for that. It's so,
Yeah,
I was like, why? Why they're there. They've taken the time. But
yeah,
yeah, if there's a way of kind of going, actually, there isn't a good fit here, but we really appreciate your time or something,
yeah,
rather than silence.
Nothing.
It's just, oh yeah, I can't deal with that.
What took you back to sea? Because I found you with this girl, Rose. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's me.
Tech to the ocean. What happened?
I mean, I was just fed up of Zoom calls. Is that what it's the best way to avoid Zoom calls and emails, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, it was a funny one. I think from I was working within VMware, I think, when
Mhm.
I kind of had this idea of wanting to do something slightly different.
Mm.
And it was more to do with around raising money for charity. So the charities that I chose, they were quite emotionally connected for me. So it was the
Mhm.
Prostate Cancer UK charity specifically. My father passed away just before I left for the row last year.
Oh, wow.
I was in
Mm.
actually it's a year tomorrow, which is crazy, but
Oh.
it was in September. I was
Mhm.
raising money for prostate cancer, but he got diagnosed 2016, 2017, I think it
Okay.
was.
Yeah.
So it was quite a shock for all of us, but it was also my brain went, right, what are we going to do? Let's go and do this.
Yeah.
And he always wanted to go and sail around the world. That was his big
Yeah.
plan. That was his thing. And it was still up until the beginning of last year. We were still kind of planning it and kind of looking at sailing boats and looking at all these things. And it was only when, anyone who's obviously been around cancer, it seems to just, something happens and they just go
Yeah.
down very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So August and September, so he passed away in September. I
Mm.
think the bit for me, I think obviously being within VMware, and VMware is a fantastic company, and they do a lot for their employees. So I was very well, from like a mental health standpoint, I was very, very well
Yeah.
looked after. But I
Yeah.
kind of said then, I was like, I want to do something big. I want to raise money for these charities,
Yeah.
and it has to be sea related, because I think I miss being on the ocean. I miss
Yeah.
having freedom and just kind of
Yeah.
being surrounded by water. I think a lot of people say they find that terrifying when they've got water around them and there's no land. I find it the most exhilarating feeling in the world, because it's
Yeah.
just, it's just you, and it makes for a very simple life. So yeah, I
Yeah.
signed up on my 30th birthday, actually. So that would have been November 2019 was when I officially signed up, and then it was
Yeah.
3 years of prep, which was crazy. And then literally on December the 12th last year was when I started.
And it is I guess other whiskies are available. Talisker, is that right? Is it?
Yeah, I think they've stopped. I think it's normally called the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. I think they
Right.
aren't sponsoring it anymore, but I think last year was the last year, because it was their 10-year anniversary, I think, of sponsoring an ocean row. So
Okay.
I was the last one. So it was called the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. I think it's now
Uh,
rebranded as the world's toughest row, I think is what it's called.
ah, wow. So, having done the world's toughest row,
Yeah.
did were you were there a number of you who applied to for the opportunity to take the challenge? How does that work? Because you
It's
signed
a
up, but
Yeah, so it's how how crazy you're kind of feeling. The way it works is that you kind of there's it's basically just like an entry fee. So you have to
yeah,
then raise sponsorship,
right,
raise funds,
okay.
pay for the entry fee, and then to pay for the boat. The actual race itself costs about £100,000,
Wow.
which is like a shocking. I have anyone who's able to raise funding for companies, like, and I
Yeah,
have the utmost, because it's really hard,
yeah,
and this is a very specific thing. So it's yeah, so I had to just raise money. So that's the main thing. If you're able to raise the money and get your boat and make sure you're prepared, there's a lot of different, because I guess I was lucky because I've got all my qualifications, so there wasn't anything
yeah,
additional I had to do.
yeah,
But it's more to do with kind of just making sure that the boat was ready. I'm physically ready. I think that was never, people always ask me, that's the worst thing. They're like, oh, you must have done so much physical training. I was like,
yeah,
that's genuinely the easy bit, because it's like, if you're kind of doing this, you're probably already doing something anyway. You're probably in the gym or kind of doing that
yeah,
exercise. The bit that's really hard is the mental aspect. So kind of knowing that
yeah,
you're going to be out there for so long, specifically obviously for a solo, you're out there alone,
yeah,
and if anything goes wrong, you can't just ring someone up to come and get them to fix your boiler or something, or fix the thing, or for any of these things, because it just means you have to figure it out. So I
yeah,
think that's the main thing, and the main aspect of what I had to really focus on, especially kind of losing my dad so close to the race, was kind of having that aspect of going, right, mentally, how is this going to affect me?
Yeah.
How am I going to feel when I'm alone and I'm
Yeah.
grieving for all of these, and then there's a massive storm and all these kind of things. So it's,
Yeah.
you can sign up and you've got the funding.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you're crazy enough, take it on.
Do do you feel in any way that having, like you say, your dad died just before, did the row help you process your grief in a way, having that focus and something that he loved and knew you were going to do, and
Yeah,
how do you feel about that?
it's a it's one that I've kind of really, so since coming back, so I came back to the UK on April the 1st, so I've been back for about 5 months now. I think since being back, I've had to maybe really look at how I was during the row, and I think it was an aspect of it did really help me kind of being alone for that long, because I kind of got every emotion possible. I could cry all day while rowing and no
Yeah.
one would actually see.
Yeah.
But I think it gave me space to kind of really understand and kind of think about everything that he would want me to do, what I want to do going forward. And just, it gave me a really, I don't know what the word is, just a different aspect on what I wanted to do in
Mm,
life, I think. And I'm not, and I've said this before, I think in an interview, I'm inherently not a religious person, and I
mm,
was I went to Catholic school. It's probably the reason
yeah.
why I'm not religious now.
Yeah.
But it's I genuinely, I think for those 98 days, I thought my dad was on the boat with me for the 98 days, because I just,
Yeah.
it kind of, there was something around it that I knew I was in his environment. I was on the
Yeah.
ocean, the place that he loved to be, and then I was with him.
Yeah.
It's like it gave me more time with
Yeah.
him, and I'm going to hold it together and not get emotional, but it kind of, it now allowed me the space that I would never have had at home to kind of deal with a huge loss in my life. So it was, yeah, it was one of those things that it was a blessing to have the time alone.
Yeah.
I have wanted him there, and obviously that the ideal situation is he's still here and he saw me finished, but he did see me finish in a roundabout way, and he was with me the entire time, and he gave me a little bit of extra strength, I think, that maybe I possibly wouldn't have had before.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, there's something very beautiful in
Mm.
that, just feeling, like you say, that he's there and you're carrying him and he's holding you.
Yeah, yeah, it was a
Um,
very, it
yeah.
helped, really, really did, it helped.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you had a partner waiting at home for you, or waiting
Yes.
in Antigua to collect
Yeah.
you? Collect you.
Yeah.
Like collected you
Pick me
from
up.
the spa.
Yeah.
Come on then, let's go home. Um, Tell me how it felt returning to dry land, to
Mhm.
people, to not being something that's moving the whole time.
Uh,
What was that like?
I think, well, physically it was a disaster. I couldn't walk for a while.
Really?
Honestly, I was walking around when I got off the boat and I was walking around Antigua. I think people just thought I was either really drunk, like she's having the time of her life, because I couldn't walk in a straight line. They'd be like, "Oh, she's having a great time,"
Yeah.
and my mum would be like, "No, she's just rowed the Atlantic," and they were like, "Oh, she's a rower. Okay, it's fine. We completely understand."
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's that physically it was very strange, because like my
Mm,
body got so used to moving like
mm,
24/7 and kind of not being on solid ground. I think mentally, and I still struggle with this, being so many different noises, so many different people, having to just come back and kind of have a very, I came back, it was a proper kind of, I came back with a bit of a bump, because it's like properly going back into work and life,
yeah.
having such a simple life for nearly 3 months,
Yeah.
back to kind of normal work and kind of having to talk to people.
Mm,
I still find very strange. I can be sat in, I did an event in Amsterdam, and I'm sat in this massive room and I've got to go on and talk to all these people. And I'm like, this. I don't think I would have, and I get kind of anxiety, I think a little bit. It's kind of just being with that many people in that kind of space as well. Being in big spaces, like a big auditorium, when
yeah.
actually I was so used to being in my tiny boat that I could just this was my world. So
Mm.
that has been a real it's been interesting to see how I've been coping with it. And I think there's also been an element of kind of, again, reflecting on how I was trying to use all the little bits of information and what I learned about myself during the row and kind of bringing it forward. But just being around people and kind of noises and things that I just hadn't had for so long was very, very strange.
It's crazy though how you say to me, I had such a simple life. Just like, if I could think of anything more complicated than solo rowing across the
And it
ocean.
sounds so silly when I say it, and I completely get that. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, all I need to do is basically I need to row, I need to eat, and I need to sleep. Row, eat, sleep, and that's all I did. And I was like,
Yeah,
this is great. Like, there's no one responding to me on emails requiring
yeah,
something immediately or anything, or even like phones, like kind of social media and phones that I
yeah,
just, again, not having to kind of be that connected with the world.
yeah,
It it was like refreshing. It was one of those things that I
yeah,
actually got back and kind of went, I don't need to be on my like, why am I on my phone? Like, I didn't
yeah,
need it for 3 months. Why do I
yeah,
now have to sit on my phone and scrolling through LinkedIn? I would say fake Twitter, but it's not Twitter anymore. But it's all those ones that I kind of just go, why? So I
yeah.
have like just reflecting, kind of going, if I didn't need it then,
Why do I
why do I
need
need
it
it now?
now?
Kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And I'm going to ask it how it fit in my head. Why did you get a proper job again?
I mean, I asked myself this many, many times over in a week when it's like the end of quarter.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, I think in my mind, I don't know why, I think it's that 25, 26-year-old mind of kind of feeling I should be doing something more adult like, more official. I should have a title with a laptop and
Yeah,
something, rather than just
yeah,
I just wore my shorts and a t-shirt, and that was my
yeah,
life for a while. And it was, I did, and I do look back and go, well, I could have just carried on because I loved it so much, but I wouldn't now change what I do now for the world, because
yeah,
I love it. I love working in like specifically cyber sales and kind of being in this environment and having all these
yeah,
things, all the new, because we're at like the forefront of technology. There's nothing that's moving quicker.
yeah,
So I think yeah, I do look back occasionally when I'm having a bad forecast call, but it's still all entwined with that kind of element
yeah.
of going, I've obviously used everything that I learned when I was younger and through the sailing
Mm.
to kind of get me where I am now. So it's I'm happy that I came back and went, I need to get a proper job.
I love also that you've got that kind of blend of saying, I'm going to have an adventure, I'm going to apply some skills that I learn, I'm going to take on an enormous challenge, I'm going to put
Mm.
myself out there because whilst you were not on your phone scrolling, social media was pretty busy, like sharing your exploits.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's something fantastic in there in terms of demonstrating that it is possible to pursue a passion and
Mm.
have that link in with work that you may choose to do professionally and that enhancing your usefulness, attractiveness, the skills that you have to an organization. It doesn't preclude you from, she said, it doesn't preclude you from being a sales director. The fact that you um, did your solo row. And if anything, it gives you something extra to bring
Mm.
to the organization.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's like perspective that I wouldn't have had before, massively.
yeah.
Mm.
So what's next? Royal Navy gonna snap you up? They go, we need that woman to sort
Yeah.
out our site. Because things like this for me, I'm like cybersecurity, protecting national assets, protecting our
Mm.
waters. It's all now intertwined, isn't it?
Is indeed. Yeah, it is indeed. I think there's I'm not, I think the what's next thing, I think there's, I'm not sure. I know that, like I say, I've got, from a rowing perspective, I have another challenge. Um,
Mm.
whether I can say it on here.
Oh, please. No. No, it's
I mean, no,
entirely in
no,
your control.
so I can broadly say, so there's
Okay.
the next challenge, no woman has ever done this solo before, ever. So, and this is because of various reasons, in that
Okay.
it's fairly challenging. It's more challenging than any other row that I could
Yeah.
possibly do. The weather is awful.
Okay.
It's cold.
Okay.
It's one that you don't normally do because there's lots of reasons why not to.
Okay.
So that's where I go, let's
Okay.
do it. So
Yeah.
that's that's in the works.
Yeah.
And I will be kind of I'm actively looking for new sponsors for that one.
Great.
But I think from like a career perspective, I think I'm so, again, I think where I am now, I would never have imagined I was here 6 years ago or so.
Yeah.
But I can only kind of see that I can now use everything that I've taken, the company that I'm in,
Yeah.
and just carry on and kind of grow and kind of just be, I don't know, just take all this kind of little bits of human nature that I've kind of then had to kind of take on, and the emotional side and the empathetic side that I'm trying to bring into sales. I think
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to do. So,
Fantastic. Well, I will make sure that all of your whether your LinkedIn
mm,
link is in the show notes so that people can find out what you're up to and sponsor you. What would you, as a kind of parting piece of advice, if there are people that are going, I would like to do something similar,
yeah.
or I would like to find a way to combine my passion with work, what would your kind of advice to them be?
I think very simply, I think finding your passion, because a lot of people still maybe struggle on finding that, or don't really understand that they can still find something that they are really focused on and also have a career as well. I think
Yeah.
I'm a good example of, basically, I'm not specifically for kind of doing sporting or adventure things. I'm not an athlete in any sense of the word. Um, I just have a bone in my body that basically goes, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I think it's having that, a little
Yeah.
bit of self-belief, and especially for women, and having a little bit of self-confidence, self-belief, and knowing that if you really want to focus on something, and you've got that as a plan for, if it's a row or if it's a marathon, anything that you really want to focus
Yeah.
on, having that bit of self-belief gets you so far.
Yeah.
And it really shows, and it shows in your work as well. If you have that kind of, and I know it's hard to find, and how I managed to find it was just constantly putting myself out there, going, what can I do? What is there anything I can make myself? And I want to focus on this. Can I make myself better? And just trying to speak to as many people as possible. And that's basically what I did. And I think I got to a point where I went, oh, I can do this.
I can do
I
this.
can make
Yeah.
this. And as I focus on it, and I can do it. And it's as simple as that. I say simple as that, but I know it's something that, and I talk about this, and I do a couple of like talks and kind of, and
Yeah.
I've got into it, and I've spoken to you about this before. And I think I spoke, and I remember saying this to you, I spoke to a really amazing group of WI
Yeah.
in my local area, and I loved them. They were
Yeah.
just, and I remember trying to describe to them, I said, what I really want you all to do is basically act as your own wing woman.
Yeah.
And like, what? It's like, okay, well, I was like, can you, I tried to explain it. I was like, if you ever have been out with your friend and
Yeah.
there's a guy there, and you're trying to build your friend up because actually your friend really likes the guy or something,
Yeah.
or they just want to build up that little bit of self-confidence. I was like, do that for yourself. I was
Yeah.
like, be that person, so that you can build yourself up, see all those amazing things that they're able to achieve and do
Yeah.
and be. And that's how it starts. It's kind of having that little bit of confidence within you to go, okay, yeah, let's
Yeah.
like let's do this. And then know, like, all, like, specifically all the women around you are just, we're like the biggest cheerleaders there are, and we will
Mm.
support you and we will help. And it's like, I'm very happy, I have women messaging me constantly saying, I want to get into this, or we want to do this, so I will do anything to try and help them, because that's what I want. I want people to have that environment that they can just go, I want to go and do this. What do you think? Yes, do it,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Well, I'm like 100% like a full foot like proud to be a supporter of yours. And thank you for being a supporter of mine. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and for
Loved it.
sharing your story. And I will put the comments in the I'll put in the link for people to find you, that they can
Mm,
sponsor you on your next big adventure.
that would be lovely. That would be very useful.
Thank you.